Welcome to the How to Raise Money podcast for anyone who wants to raise other people's money for a business or property venture. Right now, there has never been more money on the planet, and there has never been more opportunity. This podcast will help you put the two together. So, if you need money for your business or property proposals from banks, lenders, angels, whales or dragons, this is the podcast for you.
Hey everyone, welcome to a very special edition of the How to Raise Money podcast. And I am Ray McLennan.
And it's with me, Nigel T. Best. Raymondo, how the devil are you?
Hey. Well, I'm full of the joys of spring, even though it's October. It feels like spring, temperature-wise anyway. Bloody 25 degrees yesterday. Here we are on the 10th of October. We shouldn't really say that, but 10th of October 2023, with all sorts of things happening all around the world. I was sitting quietly reposing with a cup of tea in the garden yesterday thinking, I need to take this sweater off. So that's how I am, Nigel. How about you?
Well, I think when you gave a date there, I think we can probably go back to Seneca in Roman times, and he was still complaining about the fact that, the world was completely screwed and run by vindictive gits who are out to get you. And so I don't think much has changed. There's some horrific things going on in the world. And again, you can get distracted with everything and you can, and end up being extremely upset and anxious about all these things. But a lot of them, unfortunately, we can't control. So it's down to only control what you can control. And hopefully taking control of that little bit. If we all do that little bit, then you might change things. And Ray, one of the things that we can all control is, how the banks treat us.
Well, indeed. Well, we can control our reaction to how the banks treat us.
Absolutely.
Slightly more accurate. But the banks have a reputation, and have had for many, many years, a reputation for skullduggery, shall we say. We've both been on the receiving end of it. I know that you certainly were in 28, 9, 10 and all the rest of it with the global restructuring group of RBS. Other banks are available. We have been on the receiving end of some of the other banks as well. As we speak, actually, right now, this week, in the High Court in London, there is a case going on about LIBOR rigging. LIBOR's the London interbank overnight rate. There's no
offer rate. I think it is
offer rate. There's no such thing as LIBOR anymore. It finished at the end of June there, and it's been replaced by SONIA, which is I can't remember what SONIA.
Which is a small Liverpudlian who sings.
It's overnight. It's an overnight interest rate or something. Anyway, but there's a LIBOR rigging.
Sonia.
I know who you.
Something or nothing. In or about, or something like that, isn't it? That's probably what it stands for. Something and nothing.
Something or nothing in. So that case is going on at the moment, and that is basically where a small group of people are taking a case against the Clydesdale Bank and Virgin Money for LIBOR rigging, which set commercial rates, and those commercial rates were detrimental to those businesses, and they're now seeking a remedy and compensation and so on. And what's interesting is in the case management system there, the judge has consistently said, so master of the rolls called Zach Garoli, has consistently said, I really think you ought to settle this. You ought to consider settling this. And the banks are like, no, we're not going to settle this. We're going to fight it all the way. And the legal costs they've set aside for this are 25 million quid. That's just for the legal costs to fight it. I don't know how much they've set aside in terms of compensation or whatever, but it will be substantially more than that. But their whole argument seems to be, well, everyone was doing it. Why are you picking on us? All the banks are doing it. And the reason they were doing it is because if they didn't do it, they would be less profitable. Therefore, their share price would take a hit. Therefore, et cetera, et cetera. You can imagine all the knock-on effect. But if you're listening to this and you have been challenged by the banks, if the bank have done you wrong, stitched you up like a kipper, however else you want to describe this.
Yeah. Well, right. I was going to say, one of the articles that we were looking at, reminding ourselves of some of these things that went on, is a beautiful little quote here which it says Lord Glennie agreed that the bank should have kept its promise. He accused RBS of a lack of candour in its evidence about what happened. And the comment here on the author is just put judge speak for telling porkies.
Yeah.
I just think, there you go.
Or with the truth.
Yeah, or as someone else suggested, lying through their back teeth. So this one here, when a judge is telling you, I think you need to settle, I think you need to come to some sort of agreement, it's kind of, I think that's judge speak for, are you nuts?
I've already decided we don't need an 11-week trial. Well, anyway, back to if you have been stitched up like a kipper or done over by the banks or anything like that in the last few years, and time-wise, there doesn't seem to be a time bar on this because there's no time bar on criminal or fraudulent activity, if that's what it is. But if it's misrepresentation or something else, or if you're listening to this and you just think from a natural justice point of view, I just don't feel that I've had my proper kick at the ball, as we'd say in Scotland. I've not had my time in court because I can't afford it, or I've taken legal advice, but it's going to be prohibitive, or I don't qualify for legal aid, or something. And you're a business person, you're listening to this and you think, no, they've done me wrong. Is there any way that I can get a remedy from this? And the answer in this podcast is most definitely yes. Now, we'll go through a process here, but in order to get the details of this process, you're going to have to contact us directly. And you can do that by simply emailing us to hello@htrmoney.co.uk. Hello, Hello, hello@htrmoney.co.uk. And in the subject line, just put something like kipper or bank's done me up, or
bent over and rogered.
or something like that.
We'll know what you mean.
We'll know what you mean. Right. So the process we're talking about is what's called a commercial lien. Now, the lien is spelled L-I-E-N, lien, some people pronounce it, but it's a commercial lien. And we're going to talk about the what, where, and how, why of the entire lien process. Now, we're not going to go into too much detail, except to say that it is a thing. This is a proper commercial thing, okay? Not to be dismissed. Now, I'm going to give you a quote from a barrister who I spoke to within the last 10 days and said, what would you do if somebody took out a commercial lien against you? He said, I'd pack my bags and leave because it's game over. Now, that does not mean it's game over for him to not practice law. It means it's game over because a commercial lien is a charge. It's a way for someone who's been done wrong to secure your property and recoup your losses due to your activity, if your activity is anything less than perfect. So, everything we're going to tell you has been tried and tested and perfected in accordance with the law of liens, including how to serve a lien on the chief exec of any bank. So we're looking at Halsbury's Law of England, Volume 4, it talks about legal liens, non-possessory liens, a legal lien, the maxims of law. So it's all there. I have it all in a document, which we'll gladly share with you. We're not going to go into too much detail here, but just to safely say that this process is a non-judicial remedy for civil wrongdoing. Okay, I'll repeat that. It's a non-judicial remedy for civil wrongdoing. Now, what that means is it does not require an order of the court to be legally enforced. In other words, you can do this yourself. In other words, we have lots of templates to help you do this yourself. Now, again, you'll have to contact us, hello@htrmoney.co.uk, and put lien, L-I-E-N, in the subject line, and we'll know exactly what you mean.
So, right. Just one thing, because people are probably, whenever they're thinking of courts and things like that, they're thinking that you're making a claim or something, but that is not this, is it? It's
Correct.
only a defence.
Correct.
Or a wrongdoing, a civil wrongdoing.
That's correct, absolutely.
So you're not claiming, you are defending against something that's been done to you.
Correct. That's exactly right. Good point, Nigel. Well made. Now, the lien, therefore, arises when a bank or anyone, I mean, we're doing this for people against banks, but we're also doing it for people against architects firms, against, there's another one going against an accountancy firm, and another one going against another professional services firm, where they believe they have misrepresented their position or stepped into the area of fraudulent activity, potentially fraudulent activity. Now, the good thing here is that you can make these claims, and it's up to the other side to rebut them. It's up to the other side to respond. Now, what tends to happen, let's say you're going, for example, the one we're going after, the architects. This is a claim for about 1.8 million of damages that were done. But the 1.8 million is not the end of it, because if the architect's firm fails to respond or whatever, then under the applicable law, the lien can be multiplied times 4. That's what the damages will represent. So if you're claiming £1 million, then you can actually say, but the compensatory damages are actually £4 million. So bear that in mind.
Now, I was going to say, Ray, how many people have suddenly just hit the rewind 30 seconds and play that bit again on the podcast? Turn it up. It sounded like Ray was saying some crazy things there, but
yeah,
that's it.
Well, again, process. Just to let you know, I am a qualified lawyer. Nigel is a qualified accountant. Okay, we look at corroboration in these things. We don't just sort of pluck something out of thin air and think, "Oh, that sounds like a good idea. Let's talk about it." We investigate it. We do it in many cases. We are also property developers, and we're also buyers of property, and we're also business people, and we employ people, and we're in the trenches. So it's not as if we're sitting here as, university professors spouting theory. We're talking about actual real world life stuff that you can use. And, I'm fed up with the number of people telling me how they've been stiffed by a bank or whatever it is. And there's nothing they can do about it because they can't afford to engage in a barrister or an advocate or a lawyer or whatever. It's very expensive, and the banks fight back. And then again, as you mentioned earlier, Nigel, no lawyer wants to go up against the banks because of conflict of interest. Can you find a lawyer? I mean, what was that report you were reading earlier on, Nigel, about conflict of interest and
they effectively were saying that if you want to engage a firm of solicitors to challenge certain institutions, there's almost an unwritten rule that they never would. So you're going to find that there's very few legal professionals who would stand up and fight your corner against a bank, and they'll always cite conflict of interest, and yet they possibly don't work or represent a bank in any way, shape or form. So where does that come from? Well, it sounds like the old thing of the old boys club, perhaps on that particular aspect. The trouble is that when this happens, whether there's truth in it or not, everyone then draws their own conclusions and thinks, hold on, there's something not quite right here. Something smells a little bit. And, this is the problem here, folks. We've got this kind of indoctrination that if a solicitor tells you, oh, no, they'd never do anything wrong, then you kind of think, well, who else can I go to? Because there are crazy situations. I've had it in business where you raise a complaint and you report it down the complaints procedure, and the person that phones up to investigate the complaint is the person you were complaining against. And you go, all right, this one isn't going to work out too well, is it? And funnily enough, the phone call is, I've got your complaint about me. Let's just say this is not going anywhere. And you just go, great. Where can I go then when you're not happy with a decision? And the answer was, it needs to be raised in the House of Commons by your local MP. Well, what are the chances of that? So effectively, you feel that there are no remedies. And this is what has irked us in the past, isn't it, Ray? We feel that sometimes people are in situations where they feel completely powerless, and they feel that the system, however you want to describe that, feels to be weighted against them. And what we're looking at is, right, okay, nobody talks about this, but there are ways of doing it. Yes, you've got to get educated. Yes, you need support. Yes, you need some help. But find out if you are in a potential situation whereby something could be done about it when you thought there was nothing that could be done about it. And Ray, when we're in property, We're always seeing people who've had, things happen to them. Something goes wrong. They're stripped of everything. They are pilloried. They are, all sorts of nasty things happened. And when you look at it, you go, right, as you say, natural justice, that was a little bit over the top. That wasn't necessarily fair. That wasn't necessarily right. You gave me no way of trading out of it. You sort of created a fait accompli when it wasn't necessary. And now you're personally going after me to ruin me forever when actually it's not me that's done something wrong. And the trouble is you're up against these weighty institutions. So Ray, carry on with your lean process because it is an eye-opener, folks. Not for everyone, not applicable for everyone, but for those people who are in that situation who were unaware of this, it could be, a light at the end of the tunnel. It could be the helping hand.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a lean process. So what is it? Well, it's let's just recap. It's a non-judicial remedy for any civil wrongdoing. It offers a lawful way for you to secure your property and recover some losses. A properly perfected common law lien process does not require an order of the court to be legally enforced. It's a defence to any type of civil wrongdoing. It's a right to enforce under common law. It's never a claim, as you said, Nigel. It's only ever a defence to a wrongdoing. And it therefore naturally arises when a bank or anyone commits what could be described as a fraud. Now, the process itself, we're not going to go into too much detail here. Like, say, you want to send an email to hello@hdrmoney.co.uk and put lien in the subject line, and we'll be able to give you some more information on that. But there are two parts to it. There's a discovery process, otherwise known as a notice of conditional acceptance. So there's the discovery process, and then there's the lien process itself. Now, various jurists have suggested there are different ways of doing this, but the best and most efficient way requires, first of all, 3 separate documents in the discovery process, and then 5 separate discovery documents in the lien process. So I'll go over them very briefly without going into too much detail. Like I say, if you want detail, you can contact us, hello@hdrmoney.co.uk, and we'll gladly deal with you on a one-to-one basis, because every case will be different. It always depends. Every case will be different, and it always depends. So you have, first of all, in the discovery document part of the process, the documents are a notice of conditional acceptance. So that's NOCA, a NOCA, notice of conditional acceptance. You then have a notice of opportunity to cure. And then if you've had no response, then you serve a notice of default. So that's the first part. That's the discovery part. Basically, what you're doing in that part is putting them on notice. So if it's a bank, and if a bank may have done something wrong, and let me just say right here, right now, if you have a loan or a mortgage from a bank, the chances are they have done something wrong with that loan. And you can find out under a process called data subject access request, but that's a whole different story. So if you have sent the discovery documents to the bank, you're sending them to the chief executive of the bank, and you're sending them to the directors of that bank, and you're also copying in some other significant people in this process. You're sending that by recorded delivery, signed for, and you need to keep a note of when it was delivered so that you've got evidence that it has been delivered. Now, once you've done those parts, then you can go on to the lien process itself. And you would serve a notice of lien interest. You would then, and the most important document here is an affidavit of obligation. Now, you will require to have this notarized. Now, in common law, you can get it notarized by a solicitor. Now, a solicitor is only notarizing your signature. He's not notarizing what's in the document. Very important you understand that. However, if you cannot get or cannot afford a solicitor to notarize it, and they'll charge you anything from 20 quid to 300 quid, depending on which firm it is. But if you can't get a solicitor to notarize it, there is a thing in common law that you can have 2 other people plus yourself. So 2 good men and true, as it's called, plus yourself. And that is the triumvirate, if you like. That's 3 people that's required. So you could have 2 other people to witness this plus yourself if you cannot get a solicitor. So the affidavit of obligation is the important part. That goes off. That contains you under perjury saying this is what has happened, and you would outline it very, very logically, very unemotionally. On this day we signed this agreement. On that day this happened. On that day this happened. On that day you did this. On this day you did that. I then did this. This was the consequence. Yada yada yada. So you just outline it, usually to about 12 to 15 points, no more. And at the end, you would get it signed and notarized, and that gets sent off. Now, again, you give them time to respond, but again, in between each letter, you're talking about either 10 days or 3 days. We're not talking about 6 months, 3 months. This is a process, ladies and gentlemen listening in, this is a process that can be done in 90 days and should be done in 90 days. The beauty of it also is they never reply. But even if they do reply, you can charge them for their replies. You can charge them time and money for their replies, because they will never answer the direct questions you're giving them. They will always try and skirt round it. We've got personal experience of this from a bank on how they try and bring in what's called an interloper. Usually you address it to the person, that person never responds, someone else within the bank responds, but they are an interloper. So you send them a letter saying, you're an interloper, please go away. I want a response from the person I've written to. Nothing else will suffice. And I'm going to charge you £1,000 for this letter for my time taken to do this. So your affidavit obligation goes in. 10 days later, no reply, you give a notice of fault and opportunity to cure again. If they don't respond within 3 days to that, you serve a notice of default. And then finally, the fifth document is an affidavit of non-response. So there's your process. You've got the discovery documents, 3 documents there, and then you've got your lien process, and you've got your 5 documents there. Now,
just to jump in at that point, because people are probably thinking, oh, don't tell me. It also says you can drive a flock of sheep across London Bridge and your longbow should always be strung. This sounds like ye olde stuff that's probably been repealed, superseded, is no longer effective. But is this still up to date and usable law?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. The other bit I was going to say is when people talk about notaries, it's often used more abroad. So France, the notaire, and I was looking at something then. I was thinking, God, someone was talking about, oh, you can become a notary really easily, and it was like, cobblers, you can't. You've got to go through all various things. But the fundamental difference on a notary is it appears that their sole job is to make sure that the documents are legal and accurate and correct from a legal point of view. They are not giving you any advice as to whether it's sensible to do, stupid to do, the absolute thing you must do. They are merely saying that you have completed the documents in a legally correct way, and that's what it means. So that when you get something notarized, it means that it's a legally correct document at that point. It doesn't mean that they have given a legal opinion on it, other than to say it is correctly structured legally. If that was, a very long way of saying that's what they do, in my eyes, or my understanding of it. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, that's very fair to say. This is a thing. It is a thing. Now, what happens if after these 8 documents, if you like, you've sent your conditional acceptance, you then got all the way to your affidavit of non-response. So if there's been no response, and that tends to be what happens, you now have a valuable document. You have a valuable document. And
folks, strap yourself into this one, because this is where your mind will get blown as to where this can go. And when we talk about how to raise money, never mind resolving an issue that you may have had where you've been financially impacted and you've had a wrong done to you, etc., etc. This is how you could potentially, using this type of tool, potentially raise money, Ray, isn't it?
Well, yes, but again, you have to have had a wrong done to you. You can't.
You can't make it up.
However, if you're listening to this, as I said, and you have a loan with a bank, a mortgage, anything at all, chances are you can use this process. So hello@htrmoney.co.uk, put lien in there, and we'll be waiting for the sackfuls of mail to come through the door and deal with this, because I think there will be quite a few people affected by this, especially the way the banks are carrying on, and especially the interest rates have risen up so many times. Was it 13, 14, 15 interest rate rises? I mean, they held it last month, but it's gone up. I mean, I'm speaking to someone there. In fact, in our own circumstances, our loan went from £5,000 a month to £16,500 a month. And there are people with mortgages that I've spoken to that previously it was £350, now it's £1,600. It's crazy. However, if you feel the bank have stitched you up, done you a wrong one, then this will apply to you. Now, if there has been no response, and if they decide to settle, so if you're saying, you have caused me harm, and the amount of harm in one we're dealing with at the moment is 1.6 million. There's another one which is 625,000. But if it's settled within the first month, payment is the principal claimed. So if your principal claiming is 600,000, that is what you are settling for. And will they settle? Do they settle? Yes, they do. How do we not know about this? Well, because it hasn't gone through the court system, so it's not public. But they will ask you to sign a non-disclosure agreement to this. So if it's settled within the first month, in this case 625,000, and the principal is claimed. If it's not settled, then it's triple the damages plus the principal, so it's times 4. So the 625 becomes 2.5 million. After 30 days, it becomes 2.5 million. Now, if it's not settled within 90 days, this is where it starts to get crazy. You're now looking at exemplary damages at 100 times the original value of the lien. 100 times the original value of the lien. So that means that the 625 becomes 62.5 million, which can be secured against the debtor's estate. Now, before you get all excited, let me tell you, because it's all very well, Nigel, until, put money in till. Where's the money in till? I'm not going to listen to any of your claptrap. Sorry, I'm actually as if I'm from Yorkshire, but I'm actually from Scotland. But you're going to be, you have a valuable document in your hand. Now, a properly perfected process that gives rise to an equitable lien is capable of registration as a legal charge. Let me say that again. A properly perfected process gives rise to an equitable lien which is capable of registration as a legal charge. Now, that means they're capable of being enforced in the same way all charges are, but without the order of a court. Now, an unregistered lien is treated as the equivalent of an equitable charge which can be sold to certain merchant banks for a discounted price. Now, what that means is you're saying, well, I've got a lien that's worth 600 million or 62 million or whatever it is. What does that mean? How much can I get for that? Well, you can sell these, and they're tradable. They are tradable documents. You can sell them in the first instance for about 2%. So your lien
that's double the original amount.
Well, your 625 now becomes
times 100. Times 100, and divide it by, or really effectively times it by 2 instead of times it by 100. So
correct. So if you've got a properly exercisable lien, you've gone through the process, you've had it notarized, there's been no response, and there's a couple more steps to this. For example, you have to put an advert in the local paper, that sort of thing, and you have to send a copy of that advert to your adversary, the person on the other side. So there's no way that they can possibly get out of saying, I didn't know about this, I knew nothing about it. There's nowhere for them to go. Once you've got all of that pile of paperwork, so in other words, you've got the 8 documents that you've sent, plus the receipts where you've sent them, which would be a receipt from the post office. Then you'll have a Royal Mail delivered thing that you can print off from Royal Mail tracking. If you've got all of that, you've got a copy of the advert that you've sent to the newspaper, and you've got a copy of sending that advert to the adversary, and it's been received. That pile of documents has a value, and you can raise money with it through certain merchant banks. Now, we know who they are, we know where they are, and we can help you with that particular process. So if you're listening to this, you're driving along and you're getting quite excited and you're saying, hang on a second, this can't be a thing. Let me tell you, it absolutely is a thing. Go and look it up if you wish. It's a right of defense in an action in respect of a chattel brought by an owner to recover it. It's not a right of action in itself. There's lots of law about this, but it does entitle you to go after a third party who has committed you a wrong. It's a commercial lien. There is a process. It's been around for hundreds of years. And if you've been, like I say, stitched up by the bank, then you have a remedy available to you. You have no excuse now. Get on your email right now and go to hello@htrmoney.co.uk and fire us a message and say, I'm interested. I want to know more about this. Help me through the process. Do you have the templates? Yes, we do. Every case is different. Don't forget, every case is different. But if you've taken out a loan or a mortgage with any of the banks in the UK or America, doesn't matter, within the last 20 years, chances are they have done something that warrants a response, let's just say, that warrants a response. And if you feel natural justice has not been done, you feel you've been diddled, no lawyer's been able to help you, no one's been able to help you, this is your opportunity to cure. This is your opportunity to seek a remedy. And what's it going to cost you? You're not going to be caught up in legal costs. You're not going to have to pay lawyers tens of thousands of pounds, whatever it is. We will have that conversation with you about costs, but it's not going to be prohibitive. We are here to help, as we've always said. Let's help you raising money by pitching for that money. We've helped people raise money by going to high net worth individuals, lenders, other institutions. We've done all of that over the last few hundred episodes. But this one is a doozy, shall we say. This is an absolute doozy. And timing-wise, Nigel, I think it's pretty good, pretty apt. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're entering a phase where the old adage of you go to a bank and ask them to lend you an umbrella, they do until it starts raining and then they ask for it back. And I think we're in that phase of the cycle, and this is probably happening. Ray, is there any way you can do this retrospectively with things that were done? Say that you've settled a mortgage or a loan or something that you feel there was an injustice in the past, or does it have to be a live situation? Any idea on that?
The answer to that is yes, you can. If you've settled, yes, you can.
So you can go back and say, yep, everything about that I happen to settle is, an issue. I'm taking, I want to go back and retrospectively re-examine this because I think there was a wrong done to me in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact,
so just on that, Ray, because I think a lot of people will probably be thinking, right, hang on. Whenever you start doing things like this, people who know that they're struggling will try some tactics, and one of them is to always threaten your credit rating. But if you've done something that historically you have done and settled, there's no impact on your credit rating because there's nothing they can write about it. Right. But there's also, even if you are worried about your credit rating, there are things you can do about that, aren't there?
Absolutely. There's a repair process. I mean, credit rating agencies have to report the truth. If you, if you've had, for example, a bank, if we go back to the earlier case of Derek Carlisle, which you mentioned, he's a property developer that the RBS GRG basically went after him, in a horrible way, and they wrecked his credit rating and all sorts of things. He had all of that repaired. There is a credit repair process. Once you write to the credit agencies and say, look, this is an error on their part, they have to report the truth. So I've seen credit ratings fixed within 24 hours if you present the proper documentation and you do it in the proper way. So yeah, there's no issues there. So yeah,
so because that might be a fear people have, because we've got that it's been ingrained in us. Everything is about credit rating. Oh, it could impact your credit, could do this, could do that. You won't be able to get this. Ray, is that an element of them fear-mongering to stop us taking these sort of steps? To put the cloud of a credit rating issue, and you won't be able to borrow, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do that. Yeah.
Well, if you again go back to the case of Derek Carlisle, Derek Carlisle successfully challenged the banks all the way to the Supreme Court. But even then, after the Supreme Court found in his favour, it still took the bank 2.5 years to pay him back. And all of that's deliberate. It's to put people off. It's to put people to say, well, I'm not going to go through a 10-year court case and all this kind of carry on. If anybody wants to look up, there's a wonderful guy on LinkedIn called Ben Clark, and that's Clark with an E at the end. Ben Clark is a guy in Northern Ireland that pursued the banks for 10 years and eventually, a few months ago, settled for 1.2 million. But it took him 10 years. Now, I've spoken to Ben Clark, and Ben Clark says, well, it took me 10 years, but it wouldn't take you 10 years because I've whittled that process right down. And when I say how down, he said down to probably about a year. So for people who don't want to do a commercial lien but want another remedy, then in England and Wales, certainly, there's a remedy to go to the King's Bench, and that can be done very, very quickly as well. And again, that's something we can advise upon. Now, there is a cost to that because there are lawyers involved. So the cost to that is, but again, Nigel, it's under £2,000. No, you're not talking about a huge amount of money, but there is a cost to that, where there's a process where things are submitted to the King's Bench. I could go into that. I wasn't going to go into it today.
No, don't worry. It's just, I know we're always looking for reasons to not do it because we fear a consequence of some sort.
Yeah.
And often the people that are in these situations who go all the way have got nothing left to lose. And they always say, be wary of someone with nothing to lose because they'll never give up. They'll just, what have they got to lose? They'll just go for it. And so what we don't want is people to feel they are in that position. If you are, then absolutely you need to have a conversation here because there may be a solution to you. But for those who feel that it's heading this way, or that historically you've had a terrible experience and you're wanting a remedy for that, then again, get in touch with us. As Ray says, hello at hdrmoney.co.uk, and let's have a conversation and see if there's something, because it could be that you have lost the ability to raise money because someone's, had a go at you. And it could be that you were looking to raise more money and suddenly the rug's been pulled from underneath you. Yeah, all these things are really unfair, and they are sharp practice. Often, as we're discovering, the legality of a lot of these actions is at best dubious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is something that we think is going to explode over the next few years as this begins to unravel. Will it be like a PPI scandal? Who knows? Banks set aside, 10 billion for that PPI thing. Yeah. This could be on a scale that makes PPI look like loose change. But, it's like anything. It's geared up to make you feel like you are taking on the entire world here. And what we want to do is give some information, some help, some pointers, some direction, some support, and all the rest of it that might make you think, yeah, hey, it's worth it. I'm going to go for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, remember, Nigel and I, we're here to help. Nigel, a qualified accountant. I'm a qualified solicitor. I'm not, but we are not giving legal advice. He's not giving accountancy advice. We have to be very careful with all of that. They're all in the disclaimers, all in the footnotes of the podcast episode as you look at it.
It's for fun and education and just
education.
Yeah.
But we will help you along with this process. We've got the templates. We've got everything. We can point you in the right direction and take it from there. So, hello at hdrmoney.co.uk. I've been Ray McLennan.
I'm still Nigel T. Best. We'll see you again, folks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hopefully, unless they come and get us.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the How to Raise Money podcast. It's made for people who want to raise money as debt or investment equity for their business or property proposal or empire. The website has all the useful links and underlying research, and you can get downloads of the checklists and other useful information. See you next time, where we can show you how to raise money. There is abundance. There is money enough for everyone on the planet. The question is, Who has yours?